You didn't choose that brand because it was the best. You didn't warm up to that person because they proved themselves. You chose them, you trusted them, you liked them simply because they kept showing up, and you never even noticed that was the reason you chose them. Now, the essence of this bias series is to make you understand why you act the way you do. This bias is called mere exposure effect. It's bias number 25 in our 225 plus bias series. My name is Kali Cussons, Africa's premium high performance thinking and strategic execution expert. Now, the mere exposure effect is the brain's tendency to develop a preference for people, for brands, for ideas and things simply as a result of repeated exposure to them without any new information, evidence of quality or logical justification being added. You see this with politicians. So, familiarity alone breeds liking. Psychologist Robert Zajong demonstrated this powerfully in 1968. The more frequently people were exposed to something, a face, a word, a symbol, a sound, the more positively they rated them. They started liking them. Now, they're not doing this because it improved, the face improved. No, they were doing it because they were exposed to that. They were not doing it because it earned the approval through performance. They are doing it because they kept simply appearing. Keep appearing, and before you know it, even those who don't like you will start doing what? Liking you. You may be talking rubbish, and over time, check social media. You see people start saying, ah, yeah, he's making some sense. So your brain equates familiarity with safety. It equates safety with trust, e- you know, and equates trust with, preference. And then preference in business is purchase. In business, with preference, you can be purchased. You don't need to be the best option in the market. You need to be the most familiar one people are seeing every time. That's why you see some brands have taken over that sector. Now, example in business and relationship is so vivid. In business, two financial advisors serve the same market. Advisor A is slightly more qualified, better certifications, stronger track record, marginally superior results, but he posts on social media once a month, attends one networking event per quarter, and then sends a newsletter every 6 weeks. Advisor B is solid, competent, trustworthy, generally good at her work, but she posts valuable content 4 times a week. She shows up at every industry event. Her face, her name, her message appear consistently across LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, broadcast, and YouTube. When a prospect is ready to hire a financial advisor, who do you call? Who do you think they will call? Not necessarily the most qualified one. They will call the most familiar one. So advisor B always wins. She doesn't win because she outperformed advisor A on technical merit. She wins because she understood something advisor A doesn't understand. In a world of options, the brain defaults to what it knows because there are so many options there. And what it knows is what it has seen most. This is the neuroscience behind why Coca-Cola, a product everyone already knows, still spends billions on advertising annually. They're not doing it to introduce themselves. They're not doing it to explain their product. They're doing it simply to maintain familiarity because the moment a competitor becomes more familiar than you, the preference will shift. So your business doesn't have a quality problem most times. It may have a feasibility problem dressed up as quality problem. How do I know? I've been there. The same in relationship. Research consistently shows that people are significantly more likely to form friendships and romantic connections with those they encounter repeatedly. Neighbors, colleagues, classmates, regular commuters on the same route, church member, mosque member, and all those club members. They're not doing this because proximity guarantees compatibility. They're not doing that because proximity guarantees compatibility. No. They are doing it because repeated exposure generates the familiarity that the brain converts into warmth, into comfort, converts it into liking, converts it even into authority and social proof. You didn't fall for that person because you evaluated all available options and selected the optimal match. You fell for that person you kept seeing at the office, at the gym, at the same events until familiarity quietly became affection and affection became something deeper. So this is because if you don't know this, you will always think you made the right choice. This is beautiful though when it leads you towards genuinely good people. It becomes dangerous when familiarity with the wrong person, a manipulative partner, a narcissist, a toxic colleague, a destructive friendship, a destructive friend, and all those kinds creates false comfort that keeps you attached long after wisdom says, leave this thing, is not for you. So familiarity is not the same as suitability, but most time familiarity makes you think it is suitability. Comfort is not the same as compatibility, but most time you think that comfort is compatibility. That is why the mere exposure effect will blur that line every single time. If you are not watching for it, the mere exposure effect will do what? Will blur the line and you think this one is this one and this one is that one. Now, how do you fix that? There are 3 moves that you can do starting from now. Number 1, show up consistently. Don't show up occasionally, brilliantly. You show up best, but for 10 months, nobody sees you again. The mere exposure effect rewards consistency above spectacle. One viral post would not build the familiarity that converts prospects into clients. One extraordinary gesture will not build the trust that sustains a relationship. One billboard, advert will not become the thing that will blow you. But showing up, value driven, authentic, consistent across all platforms, across outdoor, indoor, phone, all kinds. Yeah? Yes? Across all touch points will redesign your content strategy, your advert strategy, your marketing strategy, your networking approach, and your client communication around the principle of consistent presence. Familiarity is built in the ordinary moments, not in the extraordinary, ones. So you need to know this. Then number 2 is that you need to audit who and what you have become familiar with and ask whether familiarity is distorting your judgment in business, in relationship, or are you loyal to a supplier, a strategy, a brand, a tool, simply because that's what you've always been used to, rather than because it is still the best option. So in your relationships, are you staying in a dynamic simply? You are staying in a dynamic simply because it is known and familiar, even though it is not healthy or growth producing. The mere exposure effect makes the familiar feel safe and the unfamiliar feel threatened, even when the reverse is true. Deliberately evaluate your familiar choices against fresh criteria regularly to be sure that they're not using your brain. Number 3, use strategic repetition to build market authority. Repeat your core message, repeat your brand positioning, repeat your signature frameworks and ideas across formats, platforms, and contexts. Not because you have nothing new to say, but because repetition builds the familiarity that eventually becomes trust. And trust is the only foundation on which income is sustainably built. Dr. Kali Cussons showing up consistently across Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp is not just content making. It is neuroscience in action. It may not always be easy. So here's the major principle that should permanently reshape your business strategy and your relationship approach. You are not just competing for the best product award or the most impressive resume. You are competing for a permanent slot in someone's familiarity file in his mind. And that file is not updated by quality alone. It is updated by frequency and consistency. So the brand that shows up most consistently becomes the brand trusted most by people. The person who remains consistently present becomes the person chosen most. The voice that speaks most regularly becomes the voice believed most. That's what happened even in long distance relationship. This is not manipulation. This is not mediocrity, gaming the system. This is the reality of our human brain. This is understanding how the human brain actually works. So don't neglect it. And building your business and your relationships in alignment with that understanding is what this program is all about. So stop waiting until you have something perfect to say before you show up. Stop disappearing from your market for weeks and expecting one prospect to be waiting when you return. Stop assuming that being good is enough when being present is what converts good into the chosen, into the preferred. Show up again, and then show up again after you have shown up. Because in the economy of human attention and human trust, familiarity is not just an advantage. Familiarity is the real game that we are playing. So this is bias 25. Now, a quarter of the way through the 100 biases, and your mind is sharper, I believe, your strategy is stronger, and your understanding of human behavior is deeper and ever, deeper than ever, deeper and deeper. Now, I want you to know that there's love in sharing. Share this with every entrepreneur and every professional, every civil servant who needs to understand why consistent beats perfect every single time. When was the last time you fed the brain that makes the money? Click the link below and join Dr. Kali Cussons Master Class Series and Webinar Series. See you tomorrow.